Well, hello everyone. This is Brian with Trade Masters. I hope you guys are having a great day, great weekend. Um, we're going to get started here in about 30 seconds, waiting for a few to come in, and then already have some questions being asked of individuals who could not make it today. Uh, Looking forward to this afternoon. Make sure you have a pen and paper, take notes, and remove all distractions. We're going to cover a lot of ground in a very short amount of time. We'll get started in about 30 seconds. I'm going to keep my eye on the waiting room. I cannot see the chat at this point. I got all my screens taken up with various notes of things to make sure I cover today. Again, welcome. Thank you for being here. We are excited about today and sharing with you a deeper look into TideFusion. This session is about how TideFusion thinks, why it behaves the way it does, and whether that mindset fits how you want to trade. TideFusion was built to operate with structure and discipline, to make those decisions the same way every time without any sort of emotion or impulse and without needing constant attention. Some of you may be seeing this for the very first time, and others have seen it for about a month or been associated with our community for quite some time. So, whether you're coming in from not knowing anything about trade masters, regardless, the goal here is clarity, understanding the philosophy behind the system, the trade-offs and its intentionality, and the type of trader it's designed to support as far as we're talking TideFusion. Let me keep moving forward. As you guys know, most traders don't fail because they lack effort and intelligence. We've talked about that in the past. They fail because they're asked to ask. They're failed to because they ask to make too many decisions. Basically, they're making too many decisions too quickly, or they're under unusual pressure. They're distracted. So again, it's not lack of effort or intelligence or information. It's an information overload. If you've ever stared at a screen like I have and thought, I don't have a clue what I'm doing anymore, or I don't know what to do at this point anymore. This is why you got information overload. On the left-hand side of the slide is what most traders are dealing with every day. Indicators stacking on top of indicators, conflicting signals, constant recalculations. Every candle becomes a question, and every pullback feels like some sort of threat. That environment forces us as traders to think emotionally, even if we're trying to be very, very logical. The problem isn't discipline, not discipline alone and isolated. It's decision load. And when decision load gets too high, emotions always seem to have a way of sneaking in. So on the right side, you're going to see just the opposite. Not because the market is easier, but because the decision making has been made a little bit more simple. And this is where TideFusion's philosophy begins to really matter. It doesn't try to answer every question. It reduces the number of questions you're forced to answer in the first place. And that's different. Fewer decisions made the same way every time is the foundation for everything we're going to talk through next. The slide represents a shift that separates those emotional trading instances from professional traders. After every move, especially a strong one, the natural question most traders ask is the one at the top of the screen. Why didn't we get this trade? And that question feels reasonable and logical, but it's really very, very dangerous because it assumes the goal of a system is to capture every move. And once that becomes the standard, discipline starts to erode. So the better question we should be asking, and the one professional traders learn to ask, is the one at the bottom. Did the system do what it promised? That question shifts the focus away from your outcomes and back to that process. Because in trading, you don't get paid for being first. You get paid for being right often. And TideFusion is built around the second question. It doesn't chase moves. It doesn't react emotionally after the fact. It evaluates whether conditions were met and only participates when the market proves itself. That mindset will feel very uncomfortable at times, but it's also what allows a system to stay consistent when emotions would normally take over. Almost every strong move in the market follows the same general structure. It doesn't matter the pair, it doesn't matter the time frame or the instrument. The pattern repeats. First comes transition, and this is the phase most traders hate. Price compresses, signals conflict, momentum is unclear, and nothing feels clean, and patience gets tested. And that's why we labeled this area where frustration lives, because this is the phase where traders want so bad the move to start, but the market hasn't committed yet. And then comes expansion. And this is the phase everyone points to in hindsight. Direction becomes very clear. Momentum builds. Candles start to agree. This is where trading feels easy and where confidence suddenly shows up. And then finally, you get to continuation or exhaustion. And the trend either carries forward in a controlled way or begins to weaken as participation starts to dry up. And here's the uncomfortable truth: most frustration in trading comes from wanting to be in phase two while the market's still clearly in phase one. And that tension never fully goes away, even for professionals. The difference is how it's handled. TideFusion is intentionally designed to avoid guessing during transition. It doesn't assume expansion is coming. It waits for the market to prove that it has arrived. And every trading system, without exception, must make this trade off. On one side, you have earlier entries, and they feel good, they feel proactive, but earlier entries always come with lower certainty. And on the other side, you have the higher certainty. The market has already shown direction. Momentum is clear. Participation is obvious. The cost of that certainty is later entries. And there is no system that escapes this trade off. Anyone claiming otherwise is ignoring reality. The real question isn't which side is better, it's where you want your edge to live. TideFusion is deliberately built on confirmation. It accepts later entries in exchange for repeatable and consistency. That choice won't satisfy everyone, but for traders who value discipline over excitement, it creates an environment where rules can actually be followed. In TideFusion, three things TideFusion intentionally refuses to do. It does not try to pick bottoms. It does not guess where market is about to turn. And it does not try to be right first. Those approaches can feel exciting, especially in hindsight, but they also introduce uncertainty and emotional pressure at the exact moment discipline matters most. TideFusion isn't designed, well, TideFusion is designed to avoid that type of environment entirely. It would rather wait for a confirmation, even if that means missing part of the move. That participate then participate early without then participate early without evidence. We want to have evidence before we jump in. And that's my struggle. Jumping in before there's evidence. And that restraint in TideFusion isn't accidental. It's a deliberate design choice. It intentionally refuses to do the things that I would normally do, even if it means missing some moves. If TideFusion refuses to do certain things, it's because it's very intentional about what it is designed to do. So first, TideFusion is about trend participation. It doesn't try to predict the future. It joins the market once direction has been established. The goal isn't perfection. The goal is alignment. And second, it puts confirmation first. That means conditions must agree before action is taken. TideFusion would rather do nothing than do something uncertain. That single principle eliminates a huge amount of emotional trading. And third, TideFusion is designed to be repeatable and teachable, which we love. If a system can't be explained clearly, followed consistently, and taught to somebody else, and I say taught to a fourth grade level, it will eventually break down under real world pressure. This system is built for people who want fewer decisions and more consistency. And not because trading is easy, but because decision making needs to be structured if discipline is going to survive. TideFusion operates in two distinct lanes, core and fast. Now, core is the foundation of the entire system. It is designed to participate once the market has clearly committed to a direction. Core does not try to catch every transition move. It does not anticipate. It waits, and that patience is intentional. Core is where the consistency lives. Now, fast exists for a totally different reason. It allows earlier participation, but there's a payoff here, but with less certainty. Fast must sometimes engage closer to transition times, but it never does so by guessing. The key distinction is this: fast is higher risk, not a better version of core. Core should never be adjusted to behave like fast. If core misses a move, that's not a failure. That's core doing exactly what it was designed to do. And fast gives experienced traders a little bit more flexibility, but core protects the discipline. And this slide is one of the most important ideas in the entire system. TideFusion evaluates conditions at a specific moment in time, what we call the trigger bar. All required conditions must be satisfied on that bar at the close, not one candle later, not after price keeps moving. If alignment doesn't exist at that moment, TideFusion does nothing, even if the chart looks perfect afterwards. This is where many traders get frustrated because visually the move may appear obvious later on. But TideFusion does not backfill signals. We don't predict the future, ever. It doesn't reward hindsight. It doesn't revise history. It makes a decision with the information available at that very moment and then moves on. That rule protects discipline. And without it, every missed trade turns into an emotional second guessing. TideFusion chooses consistency over visual protection every time. And this is a great example of how TideFusion behaves and why. In this boxed area, price is transitioning. It's moving, but it hasn't committed yet. Most systems get excited here. Traders start anticipating. TideFusion doesn't. If price is just agreeing, TideFusion waits. Agreement is not commitment. Commitment is when price expands, structures are clear, and a direction proves itself, not visually, but behaviorally. When that expansion happens, TideFusion doesn't chase it. It participates with rules already satisfied. That means some early candles are going to be missed, and that's intentional. TideFusion is not designed to feel exciting. It's designed to feel repeatable. At this point in our presentation, I want you to notice something very, very important. TideFusion isn't asking, did we catch the whole move? It's asking, did price finally commit and did we respond correctly? That mind shift is everything. And this slide here I want to bring up because it's a very key point in mind shift. This slide is here because pivots confuse people. And honestly, most systems never explain them very well. We've been all taught, hey, the highest point, the lowest point. That's not true. Here's the key truth. A pivot is not where price went the furthest. It is not the extremes. We've marked the extreme on the slide for you. It's the highest point price touched. And it feels important emotionally because it looks like the top. It is what we are used to. It's what we've been trained to do. But markets don't pay us for spotting the highest or the lowest wicks. Markets pay us for recognizing when control changes. A real pivot is a structured event. It's where price pushes, stalls, fails to continue, And then the market starts building in that other direction. Institutions don't treat pivots like a single candle. They treat them like a level that proved itself. And here's the part most traders miss, and this is important. A confirmed pivot prints after the structure forms. That means TideFusion will not always mark the pivot on the exact candle where the lowest wick happened. That isn't a mistake. That's confirmation. So the mindset shift is this. A pivot is not the furthest price went. A pivot is where the market proved that control changed. And when you think of pivots that way, suddenly the system stops feeling late and starts feeling discipline. Wicks are emotion. Structure is evidence. Now, this slide is deceptively important because this is where a lot of confusion does sneak in. When most traders look at a chart, their eyes naturally lock into candles, big wicks, sharp spikes, the most dramatic moment on the screen. But TideFusion is not reacting to emotion. It's reacting to decisions. That neon marker you see here is not saying use the top of this candle. It's saying this is the price level the system recognized as meaningful. Sometimes that level line lines up perfectly with the wick. Other times it prints above or below the most extreme candle. That's not a mistake. That's the point. Candles show emotion, urgency, fear, short-term imbalance. Levels show agreement. This is where price was defended, where structure was formed, where participation was confirmed. TideFusion treats pivots, stops, and structures as levels, not moments. Here's the mindset shift that matters most here. Think levels, not candles. Candles show emotions. Levels show decision. And once you see that, I promise a lot of frustration will disappear. Why the pivot isn't at the exact wick, you won't have to worry about that. Why the stop is slightly higher or lower. Why the system didn't react instantly. TideFusion isn't trying to mark the most exciting price. It's trying to mark the most meaningful ones. And meaningful almost always prints after emotion, not normally during it. Now, this slide is about ceilings and floors having a higher time frame thought process. And more importantly, understanding what ceilings and floors are not. One of the most common habits we as traders bring is drawing single lines. One wick, one high, one low. But spikes are not structure. Structure is defended. What TideFusion is looking for on a higher time frame is not where price briefly touched, where price spiked during emotion. It's not looking for that. It's looking for where price was rejected repeatedly, where participation showed up again and again, where the market clearly said, you're not going above here or you're not going below here. And that's why we use these zones, not lines. A ceiling isn't one price. It's an area where supply or demand was strong enough to stop progress. And just the same way, a floor isn't one candle. It's an area where demand consistently stepped in. And you'll notice something important on this chart. Price can enter a zone without immediately reversing. And believe it or not, that's normal. Zones don't predict reversals. They describe context. They tell TideFusion where risk increases, where trend strength may be tested, where expectations should be adjusted. But just as important, they tell traders where not to be surprised. Here's the mindset shift for this. Spikes are not structure, and structure is always defended. And once you stop thinking in single prices and start thinking in defended areas, ceilings and floors stop feeling subjective and they start feeling logical. That's how institutions think about structure. And that's exactly how TideFusion frames it. without noise. And this slide clears up one of the most common sources of confusion we see among experienced traders. This chart, why our levels don't match. Enter here. It's not telling you enter here, the exact wick matters. It's telling you this: price levels matter enough that the market responded to it. Candles are emotional. They show reaction, fear, and urgency. So we see all this movement on this chart, manual and a system zone. Notice the line, notice the system zone. Sometimes that line, that level lines add up perfectly. Sometimes it doesn't, and that's intentional. If you think in candles, you'll constantly ask, why isn't it exactly at the low or at exactly at the high? Why didn't it tag the wick? TideFusion doesn't care where price reached. It cares where price was defended. So the mindset here changes to think levels, not candles. Now, this slide is, again, not, and I hated putting colors on it, but because I want to talk about good pairs versus bad pairs, there's really not a bad pair, to be honest. It's about something much more important. Forgiveness versus punishment. That's a better way of saying it. The green, the green column, these pairs tend to be more forgiving. So when you're a little late, when your stop placement isn't perfect, when your execution isn't that pristine, when all things come together and you hear angels sing, the structure and the follow through in these markets are often gives you room to make mistakes. And it gives there's a little bit of forgiveness and grace there. But in the yellow column, these pairs aren't broken and they're not bad, but they are less forgiving. They may move faster. They may be noisier. They're more sensitive to timing and context. On these pairs, the same mistakes you made with the green pairs will cost you more. And that's why TideFusion doesn't pretend all markets behave the same. The system stays consistent, but the market's tolerance for error does not. So this slide isn't about what to trade. It's about knowing where discipline matters most and that there's a difference in each asset you trade and where sloppiness gets punished immediately if you're in the wrong pair. That awareness alone will save many traders more money than any indicator ever could. And I'm asked this question quite often. And this slide is important, and I want to make sure to be very, very clear about what it is and what it is not. These numbers you see here are my personal rules. They are not recommendations. They are not advice. They are not requirements for using TideFusion. They are simply the guardrails that I chose to operate within. Why? Because a powerful system without rules we have found to be extremely dangerous. Any system, no matter how good, can be misused if risk is undefined. And so for me, that looks like risking a small amount, fixed amount per trade, limiting how many trades I have exposure to all at one time, having a predefined reward to risk structure before I ever click a button. And those rules don't make me money. They keep me in the game long enough for the system to do its job. And that's the key idea here, really. TideFusion provides structure for entries and context. Risk responsibility always belongs to you, the trader. Always. No indicator can manage your fear. No alert can stop over leveraging. No system can protect someone from breaking their own rules. This slide isn't here to tell you what to do. It's to remind you that the discipline is not optional when real money is involved. A calm system paired with a reckless execution will still lead to chaos. A disciplined trader paired with a mechanical system, that's where consistency becomes possible. Let me tell you a little bit about the TideFusion Wave alerts and the alerts that we get. An alert is not a signal to trade. It's not a command. It's not a guarantee. Alerts are just a tap on the shoulder to say, hey, something here is worth looking at and it may be developing. That's it. Wave alerts don't know your risk tolerance. They don't know your open positions that you already have going on. They don't know your schedule for your trading. They don't know your the emotional state you're sitting in. They don't know your personal struggles that you're going through. They don't decide if you trade. They simply give you an awareness so you can decide for yourself. And that distinction really matters because the moment an alert becomes something you feel obligated to and to act on, it stops being helpful and it actually starts creating more pressure. Wave alerts are meant to reduce screen time, reduce missed context, reduce the FOMO. They are not meant to replace thinking. This system assumes a responsible human on the other side of the alert, not an automation without judgment. And that's why we call them wave alerts and not trade alerts. So, any tool worth using deserves honesty, not hype. And let's talk about wave alerts plainly. We talk about this a lot within our community about the pros and cons of alerts. First, alerts pros. They do keep you aware. You don't have to stare at charts all day waiting for something to happen. Second, they do help spot trends, especially when life pulls your attention elsewhere. They're great at saying, hey, something may be shifting. Take a look here. Third, they're quick and convenient. They respect your time. They don't ask you to babysit the market. And that's the upside. Now, here's the part most systems avoid talking about, the cons. Wave alerts are not multilingual. Markets speak differently across pairs, across sessions, across conditions. An alert can't translate context for you. They also require adaptation. If you treat every alert the same way, you're going to struggle. And if you expect alerts to replace your judgment, you'll struggle even more. And this is what the most important one. Wave alerts do not validate trades. They don't confirm structure. They don't manage risk. They don't know if the setup fits your plan, which brings us to something that sounds professional, but quietly creates, which brings us to something that sounds completely professional, but quietly creates that chaos. Waiting for closes feels disciplined, but when used blindly with alerts, it often creates late entries, misstructure, and emotional second guessing. Wave alerts are intentionally early awareness, not late confirmation. They're designed to invite evaluation, not force the execution. If that feels uncomfortable, that's exactly the point. Because comfort is usually where discipline goes to die. So, discipline controls execution. And this is the entire alert philosophy in one flow. An alert is just information. It means something may be developing, like we mentioned, nothing more. But the next step is evaluate. And this is where TideFusion does its real work. Is the structure present? Is trend aligned? Are pivots, zones, and timing actually in agreement? Most problems don't happen at the alert stage. They happen when people skip evaluation and go right to the final step of decide. And this is intentional that we wait. Sometimes the correct decision is no trade at all. Sometimes it's wait. Sometimes it's reduce size. Sometimes it's stand aside completely. Alerts don't remove responsibility. They should organize it. And when discipline controls execution, alerts become helpful instead of harmful. That's the difference between using alerts and being used by them. Now, success is trusting the process even when you miss a huge move. I was watching the Aussie US. I felt, ugh. And this is where expectations need to reset because hindsight's always 2020. Real success in trading does not look exciting most days. It doesn't feel dramatic, and it almost never looks impressive in the moment. What it looks like is this line, kind of boring, gradual, uneventful, definitely boring to anyone chasing some sort of adrenaline rush. Most traders quit systems like TideFusion right here, not because it fails, but because it refuses to entertain them. They see a move they missed, hindsight. They see a candle they wish they were in hindsight, and they confuse excitement with progress. But consistency compounds. Excitement exhausts. Missing a trade is not failure. Breaking your rules to avoid missing is TideFusion is designed for people who are willing to trade less, think longer, and measure success over months, not moments. If you can trust the process on the quiet days, the curve takes care of itself. And that's what success actually looks like. Discipline is stewardship. And I want to be very clear about why this slide exists and why it's placed here and not earlier. Faith in this context isn't about outcomes. It's about obedience to a process when emotions want control. Discipline is simply stewardship applied to trading. Stewardship of capital, stewardship of time, stewardship of attention. This first doesn't promise speed. It doesn't promise excitement. And it doesn't promise that every decision feels good in the moment. It promises direction over time. TideFusion is built around that same principle. Plans, patience, repetition. Not forcing results, not chasing certainty, just doing the right things consistently and letting the results follow. If you remove discipline, even the best system becomes noise. If you honor discipline, even simple systems can produce abundance. This slide isn't about religion. It's about alignment between values, behaviors, and decisions. Now, this isn't for everyone, and that's perfectly okay. I want to end this the same way TideFusion trades, without pressure. This approach won't appeal to everyone, and honestly, it's not meant to. If someone is looking for constant excitement, rapid fire alerts, or being first at every turn, this will feel slow. If someone is looking for clarity, repeatability, and fewer emotional decisions, this will feel familiar. The path forward is simple, but it's not passive. Learn the logic, practice the process, ask good questions, not because you're unsure, but because that's how professionals refine understanding. TideFusion doesn't demand belief. It earns trust through consistency over time. So take what fits, question what doesn't, and don't rush the decision. That mindset alone will already put you ahead of most of the traders out there. And before we open this up to questions, I wanted to frame how we want to handle questions because how we ask matters just as much as what we ask. The best questions usually fall into one of three categories: clarity, questions that help you better understand how TideFusion thinks or why it behaves a certain way; application, and these will be questions about how this fits into real life, your schedule, your temperament, your experience level; and fit. And maybe the most important, is this aligned with how you want to trade? What we're not trying to do here is debate every hypothetical, optimize every edge case, or compare this to every system you've ever seen. Those conversations come after understanding, not before it. There are no bad questions, but the most valuable ones usually come from curiosity, not skepticism. So as you think about what to ask, consider this. Is this helping me understand the system, or am I trying to force it to be something it never claimed to be? If it's the first, we definitely want to try to do our best to answer the questions. If it's the latter, I would prefer not dealing with it at this particular time. So I'm going to open it up. And I did have a few people send me questions even before the session started here. So I wrote them down. I'm going to bring that over to here so I can actually read them for you. And if you have a question, definitely put it in the chat box and I'll get that one as well. And I want to address, and we did do a couple of things for you. One of the questions that Alan and I were talking about, we knew somebody would ask. And one of the questions was this, and we want to be very, very careful how we answer it. Can you share your exact TideFusion settings? And we believe that's a great question and probably a question that everybody wants to ask. And it's pretty intentional that I didn't go deep into the settings today. Each pair definitely trades differently. They all have different personalities. The Aussie US doesn't trade like the pound yen. The US yen doesn't trade like the Euro USD. And if we gave you a universal setting, it would probably not do real well. Now, TideFusion does come with a setting, a foundation that you can build from. So for our members, we provide a pair-specific foundational setting guide. It's not perfect numbers. It's just a starting structure that matches how that pair has behaved historically. And from there, we will walk with you. We'll make sure you understand the why those settings exist and how to recognize when they still fit and when they don't. I hope that kind of answers the question of the settings part. Now, one of the typed ones in that came in was how many trades should I expect per week with TideFusion? Um, that's kind of a loaded question too. That depends on the pair. Um, and your discipline. TideFusion was geared to a 4 hour swing trade. It's not geared to go down in the 1 hour, 15 minutes. That's not how it was built. So it is swing trading. Okay. And it's not me trying to dodge the question. TideFusion is not designed to fire constantly. It's designed to participate when that structure we talked about and commitment are present. So some weeks you'll get several quality opportunities. Other weeks you may get very few, and that's a feature, not a flaw. So for instance, I'm in 3 trades this week already. I had 2 that I could not take because per my rules, I could only have a max of 3 going at one time. So we're not trying to stay busy here. We're trying to stay aligned. That's the goal. Another question that came in, I'm checking the chat box here too. What time frame is TideFusion usually meant for? Okay, I mentioned that already a little bit briefly. Uh, TideFusion was built with higher time frames in mind. It's a swing trading system. I would say most traders, 95% of them use it on a 4 hour and daily charts because that's where it was built from. But if you ask Al, he's been using it in a different kind of way on a 15-minute chart, but I would not encourage that until you understand the full uh, program itself. Next question is, do wave alerts mean I should enter the trade immediately? No. We mentioned that in our presentation earlier. No, a wave alert is not there to tell you to enter immediately. Wave alerts are awareness tools. They're not a green light. They just tell you that something may be forming that you want to pay attention to so you can go to that next stage of evaluation. And I think we got 2 more questions I have posed here. What kind of trader is TideFusion actually for? TideFusion, I would say TideFusion is probably for traders who value clarity over the excitement. And that's the best way I can explain it because I get excited on those 15-minute charts. I kind of like it. Uh, if I choose TideFusion to kind of calm me down. So if someone needs constant action, constant alerts, and constant reassurance, this is probably not going to feel very comfortable at first. But it does provide a great process that you can trust. What happens when TideFusion doesn't give a signal? Then the system is doing its job. That's the signals, the system. You're not going to, currently, I am monitoring 8 different pairs. And we will share that with our members group as well. We'll share the pairs that I'm monitoring. There's actually 9 out there. I would never encourage anybody to trade all 9. You need to have a rule because correlation problems do come into play. Um, just know when it doesn't give a signal, that means stay out. Most losses will come from trading. It looks like it's going to do, and you predict what the future is going to be, and it looks like a TideFusion's in order, and to give you a signal, and you go ahead and try to beat the signal, and that's usually a bad deal. So TideFusion is very comfortable sitting out of the market, but that's where most traders struggle as well. All right, let me leave you guys with that. And there's plenty of time for questions. If you have questions, definitely email us. Definitely email. So let me end with this. First and foremost, I want to say thank you for giving me your time, your attention, and the questions. It's definitely something that our leaders don't take lightly or for granted. It's a blessing that we have individuals who are even interested as well as membership. I would just say if TideFusion fits how you think and how you trade, great. That's perfect. We love that. If not, that's okay too. The goal here is progress with integrity. And just remember that clarity always compounds. And so, what I've done here for you guys today, if you want some more information, uh, all the QR codes are available for you to use. These will take you directly if you're requesting a Tide Fusion trade plan example. If you want to see the HUD, the heads up display that Tide Fusion does provide, if you want to have it on, the cheat sheet so you can read that. If you're ready to get started, go right to the membership QR and click on it and get your Tide Fusion. It is up and available starting today. The final version will be coming out and uploaded, and we'll get it to you as soon as you become a member. Again, thank you so much for being here. Appreciate the time, appreciate the questions. If you have any questions, feel free to get a hold of us in the future as well. God bless everybody. Take care.